All right, so this is one where we have somebody inheriting money. So they inherit 25,000 and they're investing part of it in a market account, part of it in bonds, and part of it in a mutual fund. So after 1 year, the combined value of the three funds had grown by $1,620. So that's kind of our interest. The market paid 6%, the bonds 7%, and the mutual fund 8% annually. There was 6,000 more invested in the bonds than the mutual funds, so that's going to be kind of our one equation extra that we can add. And what we want to do is say, okay, well, let's let X be the amount invested at 6%, Y at 7%, and Z at 8%. And so that's what they've done here. And that's how they've written it. And the total invested was 25,000. So that means X plus Y plus Z is going to be 25,000. Then we can take each percent and say, okay, this times X, this times Y, this times Z. Remember, we have to put those as decimals, and that's going to be how much it's grown. And well, what they've done is instead they've multiplied it by that. So one way, the most common way to do this, where's my writing, would be 0.06x plus 0.07y plus zero point zero 0.08z equals 1620. And you would write that as your first equation, and then you don't have to go straight from here and say, well, how did I get this? Because this one is not part of the thing. We know that 6, 7, and 8 are there, but where did 162,000 come? Well, what they did then was they said, okay, well, we're going to take that whole thing times 100 to get rid of decimals. And so then when you do that, that's where you get this equation. All right. So so that's how we do that. Now 6,000 more was invested in the bonds than the mutual funds. And so if we take the Y minus Z, that's going to give us our 6,000. So now we've got our three equations, three unknowns, and we're going to solve. So first we're going to say, okay, well, those are our three equations. Let's make the augmented matrix. So that just again, put the coefficients and then our equals, coefficients equals, coefficients equals, and we start with this. Now, how do they do it? Well, they say, let's take a minus 6 times row 1 plus row 2. And again, I'm going to say, well, let's say that goes to the new row 2. They don't say that. They just kind of put it there, but that's kind of that's the way I know I'm putting that in row 2. And I usually write it out to the side of row 2 as well. And so when we do that, we end up with this as our new row 2. Now, what are we going to do? Well, now we're going to say, uh, let's take a minus this row plus this row and a minus this row plus that row. Okay, so we're going to take a minus row 2 plus row 1, and that's going to be our new row 1, and that's going to be our new row 3. Okay, so when we do that, we get our zeros here, which is what we want. That's good. And so now the last thing to do is to make this equal to a 1. And so they say divide by -3. I would most likely say, let's take a minus 1/3 row 3, and that's the new row 3. And so that's another way to rewrite that. So you can divide by 3, or you can say a minus 1/3 of row 3 goes to row 3. In any case, that gives us our basically our Z is equal to $2,000, or yeah, $2,000. Now we have to make those equal to 0. So we're going to say, okay, well, let's take this row plus this row, and that will get rid of that. And a minus 2 times this row plus that row will give us a 0 there. And so when we do that, what we've done is, again, we're taking that row plus that row. That's our new row 1. And that row is going to be our new row 2. And when we do that, we get then X is $15,000, Y is $8,000, and Z is $2,000. All right, so now we have our row reduced echelon form. And so we know that's how much is invested in each. And to go back to the whole context of the problem, that means 15,000 was invested in the market, 8,000 was invested in bonds, and 2,000 is invested in mutual funds. Now again, we should always check our answers, and so we would plug those back into our original equations to see if they make sense and they actually work in all of them. And in this case, they all do, but they're not showing all this in their work. When I show my examples later, I'll show you the checks on those. All right, so that's all I have for this section. So hopefully that helps you.